Hi, everyone. Good Thursday morning and welcome to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us as I welcome on my guest here, Dr. Matthew Eriksen. He is the chair of the Department of Management at the Providence College School of Business. He also is the program coordinator for leadership development at the Providence College School of Continuing Education. Now, outside of academia, Dr. Eriksen has experience from Ford Motors to developing the leadership development program at the Transportation Security Administration. So, Dr. Eriksen, thank you for joining us today, and would love to just have you introduce yourself to viewers a little bit.
Yes, hi, Matthew Eriksen. A little bit about my background. Started out in finance, and then I guess my story is a story about what I'm teaching now, one of trying to find purpose and meaning in life, which led to high performance, which we'll talk about later. But working at Ford, getting into academia, working at the Coast Guard Academy, starting to teach leadership, taking a spat down to TSA after 9/11. When they were starting out TSA, I was one of the first 200 employees there, worked in their leadership institute, headed it up for a little bit, and actually had one of my most impactful pieces of research there on relational leadership when we followed the security directors out into the field. And then just been there teaching at different places over a number of years, University of Tampa, as well as some other places. And then finally ending up at PC, I was in Rhode Island for my doctorate. Love the place. I actually moved once to DC, once to Florida, and moved back for the third time. And just love the liberal arts environment and the way we can kind of focus on the human being there.
Well, the focus on the human element is a big portion of leadership development at the School of Continuing Education. Now, there's a component to this here. This is how to achieve peak professional performance while having personal fulfillment. Now, some might think those are mutually exclusive, but for you, that's the secret in the sauce to help folks fulfill their leadership potential, but also do it in a way that is authentic. So explain to us a little bit how you came to devise this course to basically meld those two aspects.
Yeah, I think a challenge comes with society. It focuses so much on what we do. We're always trying to meet other people's expectations, fit in, basically our survival instinct. And we learn so much about life and what it's about from society, our parents, and interacting with others. And it dissuades us from actually getting to learn about ourselves and understanding what's most important in life. So to me, that's fulfillment. That's having a purpose. It's about transcending yourself to have a positive impact in the world. And that requires peak performance. Unfortunately, most people pick their jobs, their work they're doing based on making a lot of money or what they think will make them look good and fit in. Mostly what I would say is kind of a survival aspect. So a lot of our program is really helping people understand what it means to be human, that we're relational beings, we're situated beings, we're within an emergent reality. And what a lot of that means is we become certain people and we don't actually even notice who we've become. We didn't make conscious choices in that. And then as adults, we wake up to consciousness and often find ourselves in jobs that are unsatisfying. Something's missing. And that's because we never did the work of understanding who we are, what we're curious about, what we're passionate about, and then what purpose we might fulfill. So in the end, if you find out you have a purpose of life, you're passionate about something, that will give you the courage, persistence, willing to fail to achieve peak performance. So to me, they're one and the same. And to fulfill a purpose, you have to engage in peak performance. And interesting enough, I was first thinking about that particular course to call performance management and just realized that that's not an adequate title for what people need today.
They need a lot more, doctor, today, as you said, than just fitting those checking off the boxes, trying to think that you're going to be at a job to, as you said, make a certain amount of money. I mean, let's talk about where we are right now in 2021 and especially after 2020. How important do you think it is to folks now who might be rethinking their employment, their future from a career standpoint, because so much is in flux? I mean, could there be a more opportune time for people to really have that self-reflection about what it is they're doing, either in their career or starting a new one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great time. We'll often talk when people are disoriented, that's a chance to reorient themselves or think about themselves. So this has given people time, whether they've lost their jobs or had more time to think about their jobs, or feeling, what's important in life when people are dying and other things are going on. So actually, this is an opportune time, and we're seeing that. Yeah, so most people, they just kind of plodding through, and this gives that opportunity. So I think there are people starting to think about those things and take advantage of it, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start and how to get there. People who even think they followed their career path, I've been doing some training online, and they find out that they actually don't. We had some woman who was talking about how she understood her career, and at the end of our workshops, she said, like, I really don't know what I want or who I am. And I think there's a process to that you can facilitate for people to start to understand. But there's so much that's become clouded in the way they think about things that aren't true, but they've learned to kind of believe them. And what I would call those are things that inhibit our performance and development. And often, you can see that we call that an inner critic sometimes, right? The way we talk.
We all certainly have a pretty strong inner critic. One of the components of your leadership development is having folks manage expectations. Talk with us a little bit about that. From that self-awareness standpoint, how do you begin to have folks begin to consider how to manage expectations?
So I think one of the big things we try to teach is what I would call self-reflexivity. So understanding your inner experience. There's so much of development that's about putting you in boxes, like StrengthsFinder or Myers-Briggs, but it keeps you kind of doing the work of really understanding your subjective experience and what you've learned to expect, from the world and inside yourself. So really helping people kind of gain, and there's more and more about mindfulness, right? The importance of mindfulness. Well, mindfulness allows you to be aware of your inner experience and what's going on in there. And that's what really matters, right? Is starting to understand not the expectations so much of society, but the ones you've taken on to believe that are important, that kind of dictate how you act, what you see, and what you even consider. So really helping people understand that and the limitations to that, and helping understand that, that exists within them. And it's a choice that, they can work to start to change that and take on different beliefs and see different possibilities of their lives. If that makes sense.
That does. And so if folks are watching right now, let's talk a little bit about the program. Let's, from a 5-course program approach to this, who is your typical student? Who is looking and saying, this course could really benefit me and my career development?
Yeah, I think people, who join the major are often people that went to school, didn't see purpose in it, life challenges came up, and now they're at a point in their career where they're decided to take on this challenge. So there's students from their late 20s to their 50s. And what's wonderful is seeing their transformation over the course of the program, how they start to understand themselves, how they start to shake off these self-limiting beliefs, how they start to believe in themselves and start to transform themselves within the context of the program. So we have a self-leadership, we have them working on teams, raising funds, participating in change. And I was just thinking about this before I got on the call, how amazing how many people who had put off their college education have now gone on to get master's degrees, and in things that they start to care about, social work and things like that. Just really inspirational, really moving when you help someone start to understand themselves, what they care about, and start to develop that self-belief and what's possible for them, and giving them kind of the courage, confidence, and knowing that failure happens. That doesn't define you. It's a learning experience, and kind of moving on.
And so let's say someone goes through the program. How much do employers like to see this type of education and continuing education, especially if you have an applicant? I mean, this must be able to set you apart if you're looking for perhaps a new job, to say, I put in this self-work. So not only from the self-development standpoint, but the marketability in what can be a tough employment environment right now.
Yeah, I think what we give, is what they talk about as the soft skills. But also, I think you get a person who's footed, who's oriented, and they understand who they are. So what we often say is being precedes doing. So you have to understand who you are, and that's often skipped for most of us. The focus becomes on doing. So I believe by the time they get out of the program, they understand who they are, they understand their impact on others, and what they want in the world. And we finish with what we call a purpose-driven narrative. So we try to get them to go into their lives, understand some significant experience they've had, and transform that into a story of purpose. And they can use that story for themselves to better understand themselves and use that to interview. So I think we've heard a lot of the powerful impact of them knowing one another, having the confidence to lead, and having the interrelational skills to participate in organizations, right? You still need the technical things, and those things tend to change all the time, but this gives them a firm foundation in who they are and how they relate to others.
And let's just talk a little bit about the construct, doctor. Of course, people think of continuing education and say, can I fit it into my lifestyle? Is it flexible? Is it affordable? You know, all the questions that people ask when they think potentially about going back to school.
Yeah, I think PC is one of the most affordable continuing education programs. I think it's right. Do you want it or are you ready for it? So there's always the desire, the commitment to, the passion for. I think students enter that and that builds as they go through the program. And if you care about something, to me, that's the most important thing in life. And they end up starting to care about the program because they see the relevance in their development, the impact, not only in their professional lives, but in their personal lives. And that gets them to commit and ramp it up and make the time. Life's about choices, right? To say yes to something, we have to learn to say no to others. And a lot of the things we're often doing in life aren't very beneficial to us, and we don't realize it. And we don't realize how much we can say no to create some space for some yeses.
We've talked about that here, about how much Netflix can you watch, you know, making those choices. But again, peak professional performance and personal fulfillment, if those things sound to you, our viewers who are watching right now, is something that you're interested in pursuing, we'll be sure to have those links up to the Providence College School of Continuing Education when you check back in on GoLocal. But I'd very much like to thank my guest today, Dr. Matthew Eriksen, again, the chair of the Department of Management at the Providence College School of Business, but the program coordinator for leadership development at the Providence College School of Continuing Education. Dr. Eriksen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
We'll see you soon on GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.